An entitled woman just threw a cake at Judge Judy, and the entire courtroom froze. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. But what happened next wasn't just shocking. It was unbelievable. Because that cake wasn't just an outburst. It was the beginning of a truth Lacey had been hiding for months. A truth Judge Judy peeled apart piece by piece until the whole room realized this wasn't about frosting at all. It was about lies, revenge, and a meltdown so explosive it changed everything. You're not ready for what comes after the cake hits the bench. But before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching from? Don't forget the subscribe button. The courtroom doors had barely shut behind the last audience member before everything unraveled. The cake, thick frosting, crushed layers, streaks of pink buttercream, dripped off the bench and splattered onto the floor in soft, wet plops. The smell of sugar filled the room, bizarrely cheerful against the tension now stretching across every face. Judge Judy did not stand. She did not flinch. She simply watched Lacey with an expression so calm it felt dangerous, her eyes narrowing only a fraction, just enough for anyone paying attention to know the storm was forming. The bailiff, towering but cautious, stepped forward instinctively. His hand hovered near Lacey's elbow, unsure if touching her might make the situation better, or much, much worse. Lacey tilted her chin toward him, almost bored. "Relax," she said, flicking frosting from her wrist. "It was just cake." Her voice carried the bright, brittle energy of someone trying to pretend they were still in control. She brushed a loose curl behind her ear, leaving a smear of buttercream across her cheek like war paint she wore proudly. Across the aisle, the plaintiff, Mara Levinson, owner of a tiny neighborhood bakery, stood trembling. A chunk of cake clung to her blouse, sliding down the pastel fabric in slow motion. She held her arms close, as if any movement might cause her to completely fall apart. Her eyes glistened, blinking rapidly, trying to keep dignity from leaking out. Judge Judy finally leaned back, elbows resting lightly on the bench as she studied the scene. Mara's trembling shoulders, the frosting dripping onto legal documents, the silent audience craning forward, some with hands clasped over their mouths, and Lacey, arms crossed, chin lifted, a performance of confidence wrapped around something far less stable. "Ms. Durham," Judy said, her voice razor-thin but steady, "did you just throw a cake in my courtroom?" Lacey shrugged, the smile widening. "She deserved it," she said, nodding toward Mara without even looking. "You would too, if you knew what she—" "Do not finish that sentence," Judy cut in, holding up a single finger. The room stilled again. Even the bailiff stopped breathing for a moment. Judy leaned forward, resting her clasped hands on the bench, right beside the frosting streak that continued creeping toward her cuff. Her voice dropped lower, quieter, so controlled it sounded almost gentle, but the gentleness was a warning. "I want you to understand something very clearly, Ms. Durham," she said. "What you just did—" a pause, a tiny, charged pause that made the entire room pulse with anticipation. "Was not a performance." Lacey's smile faltered just enough for the shift to register, and then Judy added, each word deliberate, "We are just getting started." Lacey's laugh came too fast, too sharp, slicing through the silence like she needed to prove she was not afraid, but the tremor in her fingers gave her away long before her voice did. Judge Judy caught that tremor and watched it, the way a surgeon studies the first cut. The frosting on the bench had begun to crust at the edges, turning from glossy to dull, but Lacey still acted like this was a stage and everyone else was lucky to be in the audience. She adjusted her blouse, lifted her chin, and exhaled loudly as if bored with the consequences she had just created. "It is ridiculous," she said, rolling her eyes at Mara. "She is acting like she has never had cake thrown at her before. People are so dramatic." Mara said nothing. She simply brushed crumbs from her sleeves with slow, quiet movements that seemed to shrink her, as though she wished she could fold herself into the air and disappear. Her eyes stayed down, fixed on the frosting smeared into the creases of her blouse. Judge Judy did not look at Lacey when she spoke next. "Ms. Levinson," she said, voice steady, "does she often behave this way with you?" Mara's throat tightened. She's been upset with me for weeks." "Upset?" Judy echoed. "Meaning what, exactly?" Mara swallowed, the muscles in her jaw trembling. "Meaning, She ordered a specialty cake. I delivered it. She refused to pay the balance, then left reviews that made customers cancel their orders. She told her followers I ruined her daughter's birthday, even though Lacey cut her off with a scoff so loud it cracked the air. Oh my God, she is not seriously telling you about that. Judge Judy shifted her gaze to Lacey, slow and precise. Speak again while I am listening to her, she said, and I promise your situation will get significantly worse. The room tightened. Lacey's mouth stayed open for a beat too long before snapping shut. Judy returned her attention to Mara. Continue. I tried to talk to her, Mara whispered. She sent me messages, dozens. She said I owed her a refund, an apology, or she would make sure my business burned. The audience rippled with quiet gasps. Lacey threw up her hands. Oh, please, it was a figure of speech. Is that why you threw a cake at her? Judy asked. No, Lacey said quickly. Then, realizing the trap she had stepped into, she regrouped. Yes, it is complicated. Let us simplify it, Judy said. You claim she ruined your cake, yet the contract you submitted, she held up a stained document, smoothed it against the bench, has alterations I did not see in the original uploaded copy. Lacey blinked twice, too fast. No, that is the right one. Judy tapped the edge of the page. Is it? Because these handwritten notes appear in a different pen, and the handwriting does not magically change mid-sentence. Lacey's jaw flexed. Well, maybe she tampered with it. Judy's eyebrow lifted a millimeter, a warning shot in silence. Before Lacey could attempt another excuse, Judy turned to the clerk. Bring me the original contract file, she commanded. Now. Mara's eyes widened. Lacey's smirk thinned. The audience leaned in. And as the clerk walked forward holding the folder, Lacey's fingers curled into fists, small cracks forming in the performance she thought she controlled. The clerk crossed the room with the contract as if he were carrying something explosive. Every footstep sounded louder than it should have, echoing off the walls like warning knocks. And the moment Judge Judy opened that folder, the entire atmosphere shifted, tightening, darkening, waiting. The paper inside the folder was crisp, unaltered, untouched by frosting. Judge Judy lifted it gently, almost ceremonially, like she already knew this document mattered more than anything said so far. She held it up to the light, letting the glare stretch across the page, revealing details the casual eye would miss. A hush swept across the courtroom, the kind of hush usually reserved for verdicts. Lacey watched with forced confidence, arms crossed, chin raised, but her thumb tapped against the side of her arm, an impatient, nervous rhythm she seemed unaware of. Her smile looked glued on, too stiff, too bright. Mara stood small but steady, her hands clasped in front of her. She watched Judy study the page with the silent hope of someone who had been doubted before, someone who desperately needed truth to finally speak louder than accusations. Judy compared the clean contract to the smudged, frosting-streaked version lying on her bench. The difference was immediate and unmistakable. Her finger traced a handwritten note in the margins, numbers crossed out, new ones added, a date altered. The handwriting looked rushed, forced, desperate. Me, Durham, Judy said, her voice so calm it bordered on surgical. The original document contains none of these handwritten changes. Lacey blinked, hard. Well, she must have uploaded the wrong one. Judy did not respond to the excuse. Instead, she turned the page slowly, letting each second stretch. A courtroom is never truly silent, but in that moment, it felt like even breath held itself still. These edits increase the price she owed you, Judy continued. They also shift the due date and waive additional decoration fees. That is a remarkable amount of benefit to one person. Yeah, Lacey said quickly, too quickly. To her. To her, Judy repeated, tilting her head. Or to you? Lacey swallowed, chin tightening. Mara stepped forward slightly. I have screenshots, she said quietly, of the original agreement, and the messages where she asked me to change parts of the contract. Lacey spun toward her. Those were drafts. No, Mara said, and her voice surprised everyone, including herself. It did not shake. It did not shrink. It held. They were the real agreement, and you threatened me when I said I could not make those changes. The audience stirred again. Judge Judy held out her hand toward Mara. Bring me the screenshots. Mara nodded, pulling her phone from her pocket with trembling fingers. The bailiff approached, taking it with professional care before handing it to the judge. The screen glowed as Judy scrolled, her expression shifting the smallest amount, a tightening at the corners of her eyes, a soft exhale that sounded suspiciously like confirmation. The courtroom leaned toward her as if gravity itself waited for her reaction. Finally, she set the phone down. "Ms. Durham," she said softly, "would you like to explain why your handwriting on this contract matches the handwriting in these threatening messages?" The question hit the room like a dropped gavel. Lacey's breath caught, her smile vanished, and for the first time, arrogance stopped working. The lights dimmed slightly as the projector clicked on, washing the courtroom wall in cold blue. Then, the first screenshot appeared, large, undeniable, and carrying Lacey's exact handwriting frozen in digital ink. Her smile vanished so fast, it was like someone had pulled the plug on her entire performance. The message glowed in pixelated clarity. "If you do not upgrade the design for free, I will make sure no one orders from you again. Do not test me." A ripple of discomfort swept across the room, tiny gasps, shifting chairs, a low murmur that felt almost like the walls themselves reacting. The glow from the projector framed Lacey in a harsh, unforgiving light, making every twitch of her jaw visible. Judge Judy sat back just enough for the audience to sense the shift. She was giving the truth space to breathe. "Ms. Durham," she said, voice cool as glass, "is this your message?" Lacey tried to laugh, but it came out more like a breath caught on a stumble. "Anyone could have typed that. It is just text." Judy raised a brow. "Text with the same grammar patterns and same phrasing you have used throughout this hearing." Lacey opened her mouth, closed it, then leaned forward as if proximity could make falsehood sound more believable. "That does not prove anything," she said, though the veneer of confidence was cracking like thin ice under heavy steps. Judy pressed a button. Another screenshot filled the wall. This one was worse. Handwritten edits. A photo of the damaged contract. Lacey's own caption underneath. "She will fold. They always fold." A few members of the audience recoiled, whispering to each other. Even the bailiff, trained to remain neutral, shifted his stance. Mara stood silently, her breath quickening, but her posture steady. She hugged her elbows, not for protection this time, but to keep herself from collapsing under the weight of finally being believed. Judy's voice dropped lower. "I am curious. When you said they always fold, who were you referring to?" Lacey's tongue darted out to wet her lips, a nervous habit she could not disguise. "People like her," she muttered. "People who do not know how business works." "You mean people who trust you?" Judy asked. "People who sign contracts with you, or people you believe you can intimidate?" A few heads in the audience nodded subtly. Lacey shook her head hard. "You are twisting things." Judy did not move. "I am reading your words." The next screenshot popped up. No noise, no dramatic cue, just truth suddenly becoming undeniable. "I swear I will rewrite the contract myself if I have to. She is not winning this." Silence fell again, but this time it was heavy, judgmental, suffocating. Lacey's shoulders collapsed inward, her arms crossing not in defiance but in shielding. Her eyes darted everywhere except the screen. She looked smaller now, like the bravado that once held her up had evaporated into the cold air. Judy leaned forward just a fraction. "Ms. Durham," she said, "why does the handwriting on these edits match the handwriting in your threats?" Lacey opened her mouth. No sound came out. Her confidence cracked, splintered, and fell apart right in front of everyone. And Judge Judy, sensing the shift, clicked the screen off and said, "Let us continue." The moment the projector dimmed, Lacey let out a laugh, loud, unhinged, and painfully out of place. But the sound cracked halfway through, splitting into something thin and shaky. Judge Judy did not react. She simply watched Lacey unravel. The courtroom lights steadied again, but nothing else did. The air felt charged now, like the truth had left static in its wake. Even the bailiff shifted subtly, ready for whatever came next. Lacey brushed her hair back with a trembling hand, pretending she was brushing away annoyance instead of fear. "You all are taking this way too seriously," she said, waving toward the blank projection screen. It is screenshots. Anybody can fake those. Judy tilted her head a half-inch, the kind of movement that said she was done entertaining nonsense. Ms. Durham, every screenshot corroborates your edits, your language patterns, your threats, and the sequence of events. This is not coincidence. This is conduct. Lacey snorted, folding her arms. Please, everyone exaggerates online. That's not a crime. No one here said it was, Judy replied, but lying under oath is. That line landed like a weight. A few audience members inhaled sharply. Lacey's smile twitched. Well, I never lied. Really? Judy asked. Let us test that. She nodded to the bailiff. A young woman stood from the back row. A witness, previously quiet, previously unnoticed. She walked toward the stand with steady steps, clutching a purse to her chest. Lacey's eyes widened when she recognized her. Wait, no, not her, Lacey snapped. She has always been against me. The woman took the stand, voice soft but steady. My name is Danielle Torres. I was at the birthday party where the cake was being delivered. Mara stiffened. Lacey's eyes narrowed into slits. Judy folded her hands. Ms. Torres, tell me what you witnessed. Danielle exhaled shakily. Lacey had not seen the cake yet. She was arguing with her sister about the decorations. And then, her gaze lowered. She knocked the cake off the table herself. She was angry. She threw her drink and it hit the stand. The cake slid off. Lacey shot up from her chair. You are lying! Danielle flinched but continued. She said she would blame the bakery. She said they ruined her daughter's birthday, and everyone would believe her because she had a bigger platform. A hush fell over the room. Heavy, thick, undeniable. Judy watched Lacey's breathing accelerate, her chest rising too fast, too shallow. Ms. Durham, she said, were you ever planning to pay the remaining balance for the cake? Lacey's eyes darted everywhere, the bench, the floor, the ceiling, as if searching for a story that had not already been destroyed. It does not matter, she said. She embarrassed me in front of everyone. Mara's voice broke through quietly. You embarrassed yourself. Even the air seemed to stop. Judy leaned forward. Ms. Durham, this is your opportunity to tell the truth. I strongly advise you not to waste it. Lacey slammed her palm on the table. You do not understand what she did to me. Her voice cracked. Not from anger, something else, something fraying at the edges. And in that brittle moment, something in her facade broke completely. Lacey's hand was still pressed to the table, knuckles white, breath uneven. Judge Judy lifted one finger, just one, and the entire room froze like someone had hit pause on reality. The next words Lacey spoke would not come from arrogance, they would come from panic. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. Lacey's eyes darted from face to face, Mara's trembling composure, Danielle's guarded concern, the judge's razor-still posture. The courtroom felt smaller now, as if the pressure in the room was physically shrinking the walls. Ms. Durham, Judge Judy said, her voice soft as a warning note. What exactly did Ms. Levinson do to you? Lacey blinked rapidly. Her mouth opened. No words came. For the first time since the hearing began, her bravado slipped off her like a glove turned inside out. Her shoulders sagged, her voice small, not in humility, but in fear of the truth she could no longer outrun. Lacey started, swallowing hard. She looked down on me. The courtroom reacted with a murmur, confusion, disbelief, surprise. Judy did not move. Look down on you. Lacey's eyes flashed defensively. You do not get it. People like her, they always think they are better. Mara flinched, not from guilt, but from the weight of how untrue the accusation felt. She stood straighter. I never thought I was better than you. I was just trying to run my business. That's what you call it? Lacey snapped, but the sharpness in her tone was fading, replaced by something frayed. You rejected me. The word landed strangely, different, heavier. Judy's gaze sharpened. Rejected you? How? Lacey inhaled through shaking lips. I applied for a job at her bakery. She said she appreciated my creativity, but did not think I was a good fit. She said my designs were too unpredictable. The audience's heads turned toward Mara. Mara's eyes softened. I said your ideas were bold. I just needed someone who could follow instructions. You left halfway through your trial shift. Lacey's face twisted, somewhere between anger and humiliation. I left because it was insulting. You wanted me to decorate cupcakes like I was some beginner. You were a beginner, Mara whispered. Lacey froze. Her throat bobbed. Truth hit her harder than frosting ever could. Judge Judy leaned in slightly. Is this why you attacked her business? Because you felt embarrassed? Lacey wiped her cheek with the back of her hand, smearing mascara. I worked so hard on my own baking page, and nobody cared. Nobody. But she gets all this attention without even trying. Mara's eyes widened with quiet heartbreak. It was not personal, Mara said. I just needed reliability. Lacey laughed bitterly. Yeah, tell that to the whole internet. Judy tapped her pen once, a quiet, decisive sound. Ms. Durham, did Ms. Levinson ever actually harm you? No, Lacey whispered. Did she ever humiliate you publicly? No. Did she threaten you? Lacey's breath shuddered. No. Mara closed her eyes, a single tear slipping free. Judy nodded once toward the bailiff. Play the voicemail. The instructions sliced through the air. Everyone turned as the bailiff connected the speaker, the room holding a single collective breath, and just as the audio clicked on, Lacey whispered the truth she never meant to let slip. I was the one who ruined everything. Tell me in the comments, if you sat in this courtroom, would you stay silent or speak up? The speaker crackled, and for a moment, the entire courtroom leaned forward as though pulled by a single thread. Then, Lacey's voice, slurred, unsteady, heartbreakingly honest, filled the room. And with every word that echoed out, her last defenses began to collapse. A soft, static buzz drifted through the air before the voicemail played. Lacey squeezed her eyes shut as if bracing for impact, but the sound came anyway, her own voice, unmistakable. Hey, Mara, the recording began, her tone warped with exhaustion, alcohol, and a sorrow she never intended anyone else to hear. I messed up, seriously messed up. A few audience members shifted in their seats, uncomfortable, as if listening to something they were not meant to witness. On the bench, Judge Judy's expression did not soften, but it changed, sharpened with recognition. This was no longer performance. This was evidence of a truth Lacey had been trying to bury. The voicemail continued, Lacey's recorded voice cracking between breaths. You're a nice person, too nice, and I keep ruining things. I always ruin things when I feel like I'm the only one losing. In the present, Lacey stared down at her hands, silent, shaking. Mara covered her mouth with one trembling palm. A tear slipped free, not because she was vindicated, but because hearing someone's private pain, someone who caused her so much harm, felt heavier than anger. The recording grew quieter, almost whispered. I didn't mean to scare you. I hate feeling invisible. A deep, uncomfortable hush washed over the room. Invisible. The word lingered like a bruise. The next part of the message was worse. And the cake. The cake wasn't your fault. I dropped it. I know I said you did it, but I can't admit that out loud, not when everyone already thinks I'm a joke. Lacey's shoulders folded inward, as if the words physically hit her. Judge Judy watched closely. Every detail, every breath, every twitch, absorbed with the focused attention of someone who sees through people for a living. The voicemail ended with a soft, broken plea. I'm sorry. Please don't make me feel like nothing. Silence took over, thick and almost suffocating. It was not the silence of judgment this time. It was the silence of collective realization. The story Lacey had tried so desperately to control was unraveling in her own voice. Mara lowered her hand, blinking through tears. She did not look triumphant. She looked tired. Tired from months of defending herself, tired from being publicly attacked, tired from carrying fear she never deserved. Judge Judy broke the silence. Ms. Durham, she said quietly, is there anything at all that you would like to say after hearing your own words? Lacey swallowed. Her throat tight, her lips parted, then closed again. She tried to gather the lies she once relied on, but none came. They had nothing to hold on to. Her voice finally emerged, thin, trembling, stripped bare. I didn't mean for it to get this far. Judy nodded once, a small, decisive motion. But it did. The judge shifted her papers, the quiet rustle sounding like judgment sharpening itself. "Let us discuss the damages," she said. And with that line, Lacey's last illusion of control slipped quietly to the floor, just like the cake she once blamed on someone else. Lacey opened her mouth to argue again, but Judge Judy raised her hand, slow, deliberate, final. The shift was so subtle most people missed it, but those who caught it felt the floor tilt beneath them. This was the moment the power in the room changed sides. The bailiff stepped back into position, sensing what was coming even before Judy spoke. Lacey leaned forward, searching for some scrap of control she could still cling to, but there was nothing left. Not after the voicemail, not after the contract, not after the truth had started bleeding through her excuses. Judy shuffled a few papers, each sound like a quiet threat. Then she set them down. "Ms. Durham," she said, "you have lied, you have altered documents, and you have admitted, indirectly and directly, to actions that harmed the plaintiff. However, there is one more matter we need to address." Lacey's eyes narrowed, panic flickering behind irritation. "What more do you need?" Judy leaned back in her chair, fingers laced calmly. "I did a bit of research before this hearing. I reviewed your social media presence." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Lacey's shoulders stiffened. My social media? Why would you?" "Because," Judy said, "you posted publicly, and what is public may be reviewed." A low murmur rippled through the audience. The clerk brought over a small stack of printed screenshots. Judy placed them neatly on the bench, tapping the top page with a single finger. "Here," she continued, "is a post from 3 days before the party, the one where you claim Ms. Levinson ruined your event." Lacey swallowed hard. "So what? You posted it before the cake was delivered." The room reacted instantly. Gasps, whispers, a collective jolt of disbelief. Lacey's mouth opened, but Judy did not let her speak. "And this one," Judy said, lifting another page, "was from the night before. You mocked the bakery, called the plaintiff the cupcake clown, and encouraged your followers to watch how a real woman handles a fake business." Lacey tried to reach for the papers. "You are twisting everything. It was satire." Judy pulled the papers back, voice unchanged. "I am not done." The next page hit the bench with a soft but devastating thud. "This," she said, "is a post from the morning of the hearing." The audience leaned forward as Judy read aloud. "If the judge gets snippy, I swear I'll throw the cake in her face too." The air left the room. It was the kind of silence people remember because it feels like the moment before lightning hits. Lacey went pale, frozen in place, caught by her own hand, her own words, her own prediction of the chaos she later pretended was an emotional accident. Judy lowered the paper. Eyes locked onto Lacey with unwavering intensity. "You did not lose your temper," she said. "You did not act spontaneously. You planned this." Lacey shook her head, breath trembling. "That post was a joke." "No," Judy said, her voice sharp as a blade. "What you did was deliberate." Lacey's face crumpled, the smile she once wore so proudly now gone without a trace. Judy tapped the post again, a gentle gesture carrying the weight of a hammer. "And now," she said softly, "we address the consequences." The word premeditated did not just echo, it settled, heavy and cold, in the center of the courtroom. Lacey's face drained of color as if someone had pulled the world out from under her feet, and the silence that followed was not shock. It was consequence beginning to take shape. Judge Judy did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Her stillness alone reshaped the room, an unspoken verdict that made even the spectators sit straighter, quieter, almost reverent. "Ms. Durham," she said, folding her hands atop the bench, "you planned an attack on the plaintiff. You considered attacking me, and you executed part of that plan on camera." The paper with Lacey's own threat lay between them like a mirror she could not avoid. Lacey's breath came fast, shallow, almost childlike in its fragility. It was a joke," she whispered, her voice wobbling. "People post jokes all the time." Judy held her gaze. "A joke requires humor. This was intent." The audience murmured, a low, uneasy rumble, like distant thunder rolling across an open sky. Even the bailiff's posture shifted, no longer protective but observant, as though waiting for the full collapse. Lacey's hands trembled. She clasped them together, squeezing so tightly her knuckles reddened. "You don't understand," she said. She made everything worse." Mara looked up sharply, startled by the accusation she had not earned. "I did not do anything to you," she said quietly. "You dragged me into your fight with yourself." Lacey's expression flickered, a trapped animal panic rising behind the remnants of defiance. "You don't get it," she insisted, voice cracking. "She took something from me." Judy leaned forward. "What exactly did she take, Ms. Durham?" The question hit with surgical precision. Lacey blinked, once, twice. Her facade, already cracked, began to crumble under its own weight. She struggled to find an answer that made sense, an answer that still allowed her to feel wronged. Finally, her whisper escaped. "My chance." The room stilled, confusion stirring among the faces watching her. Judy remained unmoved. "Your chance at what?" Lacey stared at the floor, fingers twisting together, breath shuddering. Her voice came out small, uneven. "At being somebody, at proving I was good at something, at not being a joke." Her shoulders shook once, barely noticeable but real. Mara's expression softened, despite herself. Judy watched the shift, a moment of human truth slipping through the cracks. But she did not let emotion cloud the clarity of what mattered most. "You had the opportunity," Judy said gently, "to prove yourself through work, honesty, and accountability. Instead, you chose deception. You chose aggression. You chose harm." Lacey's eyes filled, but she looked away before the tears could fall. "I didn't mean for it to get this far." "But it did," Judy said, "because you kept pushing the lie." The judge lifted the stack of evidence, contracts, screenshots, posts, the voicemail, all of it forming a paper tower of truth. "This is not about embarrassment," she said. "This is about responsibility." Lacey's breath hitched. Her shoulders collapsed inward, and then, barely above a whisper, she said, "You don't know what she took from me." Judy's eyes narrowed, not with anger, but with understanding of something deeper forming beneath the surface. "What did she take?" she asked softly. Lacey's lips parted, trembling. Before she could answer, the courtroom fell silent, every eye fixed on her, waiting for the truth she had kept buried far longer than the lies. "Do you think remorse should ever erase accountability? Or does justice demand consequence no matter what?" Lacey did not speak at first. She stood there, trembling, like a person balancing on the edge of a confession they never meant to say out loud. And when she finally lifted her eyes, the arrogance was gone, replaced by something raw enough to quiet even the whispers. Judge Judy waited. Not impatiently, not sternly. Just waited. Silence can be a form of truth, and Judy knew how to use it better than anyone. Lacey's breathing grew uneven. She rubbed her palms against her thighs, leaving faint streaks of cake frosting she had forgotten to clean away. The traces of that earlier explosion made her look younger, messier, human in the most uncomfortable way. "She took my chance," Lacey whispered. "Your chance at what?" Judy asked, voice soft but steady. Lacey's jaw tightened, a flicker of shame crossing her eyes. "My chance to matter." Mara froze. The audience stilled again. Even the bailiff, a man who usually showed no reaction, drew in a small, controlled breath. Judy leaned back slightly, signaling she was not here to attack this part. She was here to understand it. "Explain." Lacey swallowed. Her fingers curled into fists, then uncurled again. "I applied for a job at her bakery 2 years ago. I walked in with my portfolio, my designs, the best work I had ever done. I thought, maybe if someone believed in me, I could finally believe in myself." The tremor in her voice broke something in the room. Mara looked devastated, not defensive, not angry, just quietly undone by the idea that her normal business decision had created this much resentment. "I told her I liked her ideas," Mara said gently, though she hadn't been invited to speak. "I thought you were creative." "You told me I was unpredictable," Lacey snapped, but the snap lacked teeth. "You said I needed structure. You said I wasn't ready." Mara blinked. "Because you left halfway through your trial shift." Lacey winced. The truth stung like salt on an open wound. I left because I panicked. Everyone was better than me. Everyone was faster. And when I messed up the frosting, one of your decorators laughed. I thought, you were all laughing at me." Judy nodded slowly, letting the revelation unfold. "So you assumed humiliation where there was none." Lacey nodded, tears gathering but refusing to fall. "I told myself you crushed me, that you made me feel small. But I already felt small. And when your shop got more customers, and your posts got more likes, and your cakes became a local thing," her voice cracked, "it felt like you were everything I wanted to be and couldn't." The audience's expression shifted, not pity, not absolution, but understanding of how pain can twist into something unrecognizable. "And so," Judy said quietly, "you created a version of her in your mind, a villain who wronged you." Lacey nodded again. "And then," Judy continued, "you used that illusion as permission to hurt her." This time, Lacey did not argue. She whispered, barely audible, "I did not know how to stop once I started." Judy watched her for a long moment. Then she asked the question that peeled away the last layer. "So all of this, the harassment, the lies, the cake, was because you felt she represented a life you wanted but didn't have?" Lacey's voice broke entirely. "Yes." The truth hung in the air, heavy, honest, heartbreaking. And as the room sat in the weight of it, no one saw the next twist coming. Lacey's confession still hovered in the air, fragile and trembling, when Judge Judy leaned forward, eyes sharp, expression unreadable. The room had softened around Lacey's vulnerability, but Judy hadn't. She wasn't finished, not even close. "Ms. Durham," Judy said, voice steady as steel wrapped in calm, "you told us why you lashed out, but not how far you went." Lacey wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand, quick, embarrassed swipes. "I've already told you everything." "No," Judy replied. "You've told me everything you're comfortable admitting. That is not the same thing." The audience shifted again, sensing the momentum changing. Lacey tensed, shoulders rigid, eyes flicking to Mara like she was searching for a shield that didn't exist. Mara stood very still. She didn't look vengeful, only exhausted, as if the truth, however painful, was the only thing she wanted left. Judy tapped her pen lightly against the bench. "Let me ask you something simple. When the cake arrived at the party, was it already damaged?" The question shattered whatever fragile calm Lacey had managed to scrape together. She froze, breath catching in her throat. A long, aching second passed, then another. Her lips parted, but no denial came. Judy watched her with clinical patience. "Ms. Torres testified that you knocked the cake over. The voicemail confirms you admitted fault privately. But there is still one detail missing." Lacey blinked rapidly. I didn't, it wasn't." "Stop," Judy said sharply. "Do not lie now. The truth is already circling you." Lacey's chest rose and fell in ragged waves. She looked cornered, not by the judge, not by evidence, but by her own conscience snapping under its own weight. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. "Mean to what?" Judy asked. Lacey's voice shrank into a confession that felt wrenched out of her. "I damaged the cake before the party." A ripple of gasps shot through the room. Judy didn't flinch. "Explain." Lacey squeezed her eyes shut, tears spilling despite her efforts to hold them back. "The design wasn't what I imagined. It wasn't perfect. And when I saw it, I felt that same humiliation all over again. The humiliation from the bakery, from my failed page, from everything." She sucked in a shaky breath. "So I scraped the side, just a little. I told myself I could fix it, but I couldn't. And then I got angry, at myself, at the cake, at her." Her voice cracked into a broken whisper. "By the time Mara arrived, it was already ruined. I just made it look like she did it." Mara covered her mouth, a soft, strangled sound escaping her, a mixture of heartbreak and disbelief. The audience stared, stunned. Judy sat back slowly. "So you sabotaged your own order to justify destroying her reputation?" Lacey nodded, collapsing into herself. "I just needed a reason to blame her instead of admitting I failed again." Judge Judy let the silence settle. It wasn't punitive, it was the kind of silence that makes truth echo louder. Then she spoke, her voice low and final. "Ms. Durham, you didn't destroy that cake." A pause. "You destroyed yourself." Lacey sobbed openly now, the weight of her admission too heavy to hold, and with that confession, the darkest, most revealing truth, something irreversible shifted in the room. Lacey sabotaged her own cake before blaming Mara. Her entire case was built on a lie she engineered from the inside out. The echo of Lacey's confession clung to the air like smoke that refused to clear. No one moved, no one breathed. It was the kind of truth that didn't just land, it reshaped the entire room around it. Lacey remained hunched over, shoulders shaking, mascara streaking down her cheeks in uneven rivers. She wasn't performing anymore. The arrogance, the deflection, the sharp laugh, every shield she had used to protect herself had fallen away, leaving only the raw, trembling core underneath. The courtroom felt different. Not tense, not charged, just heavy, like everyone was quietly mourning something they didn't fully understand. Judge Judy waited, hands folded neatly on the bench. She didn't offer comfort, but she didn't offer cruelty either. She let Lacey sit in the truth she had finally told. For the first time, Lacey didn't try to fill the silence. She simply cried. Mara stood across the room, arms wrapped gently around herself. Tears welled in her eyes too, but hers came not from guilt or fear, but from the emotional whiplash of finally understanding the storm that had been aimed at her. The judge broke the silence. "Ms. Levinson," she said softly, "I want to hear, plainly, how Ms. Durham's actions affected your life." Mara swallowed. Her voice trembled at first, but she steadied it with a deep breath. "They ruined me," she said, not dramatically, not angrily, just honestly. "The reviews she encouraged, they made people afraid to order from me. I lost 3 weddings, 2 corporate events, and my biggest client stopped responding." Lacey's sobs quieted into small, broken breaths. "I couldn't sleep," Mara continued. "Every time my phone buzzed, I was scared it was another message from her, or someone following her lead." She wiped her cheek. "My bakery was everything to me, and watching people believe her lies, watching them attack me over something I didn't do." She stopped, voice cracking. Judge Judy nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement without pity. "Thank you. That's important to say aloud." Mara stepped back, trembling. She wasn't someone who wanted revenge. She wanted relief. She wanted her name back. She wanted peace. Judy turned her gaze to Lacey, whose breaths came in shuttered, uneven pulls. "Ms. Durham," Judy said, "you created this damage, not Ms. Levinson, not the cake, not your followers. You." Lacey nodded weakly, unable to speak. "You sabotaged your own product," Judy continued, "and used the destruction as justification to destroy someone else." Lacey winced as though the words physically hit her. "And for what?" the judge asked quietly. "To avoid admitting you felt insecure, to avoid the discomfort of growth, to avoid facing yourself?" Each question peeled another layer away until nothing was left to hide behind. Lacey whispered, voice hoarse, "I didn't know who I was," without being angry. Judy's expression did not soften, but something in her tone carried a gravitas that felt almost compassionate. "You will learn," she said, "but you will learn through consequences." The audience sat in stillness, absorbing both the cruelty of Lacey's actions and the tragedy of their origin. Mara looked at Lacey with a complicated mixture of pain and sympathy, as if seeing the person who hurt her in a new, unsettling light. The air shifted again when Judy lifted her gavel, not to strike, but to signal the next phase. "Now," she said, "we address accountability." The room braced itself, because the emotional collapse was over. Now came the cost. The courtroom didn't feel like a place of conflict anymore. It felt like a place waiting for gravity to drop. And when Judge Judy straightened in her chair, the air itself seemed to brace. This was the moment the emotional fallout turned into something tangible. Judge Judy slid the stack of evidence closer, aligning the edges with an almost ceremonial precision. Each document, every threat, every altered line, every screenshot, formed a paper monument to what Lacey had done. "Ms. Durham," she began, "we are no longer discussing hurt feelings or misunderstandings. We are discussing the consequences of your choices." Lacey wiped her face with trembling fingers, nodding in small jerky motions like a child trying to accept a punishment she had long outrun. Judy turned to Mara. "Ms. Levinson, step forward, please." Mara obeyed, moving to the center of the courtroom. Her posture was upright, but her hands curled together with careful restraint, like she was holding herself steady from the inside out. "Tell me again," Judy said, "in concrete terms what you lost." Mara exhaled shakily. "I lost my clients. My bookings dropped almost overnight. People accused me of being careless, dishonest, even dangerous. I had to issue refunds I couldn't afford. My rent fell behind. My shop was vandalized." Lacey's breath caught an audible, pained sound. Mara continued. "And emotionally? I felt watched, hunted. I felt like a villain in someone else's story, a story I didn't write." Judy nodded once, a slow, deliberate acknowledgement. "Thank you." She shifted her attention to Lacey. "Ms. Durham, do you have anything to say before I proceed?" Lacey opened her mouth, but nothing came out at first. Finally, she whispered, "I didn't want to ruin her life." "But you did," Judy replied, not unkindly, but with the weight of simple truth. "And intention does not erase impact." The audience murmured, a quiet chorus of agreement rippling through the room. Judy continued, her tone crisp. "Here is what we have established. You altered a legal contract for financial gain. You harassed the plaintiff online, inciting others to do the same. You fabricated a narrative to blame her for your own actions. You sabotaged your own cake to justify your behavior. You premeditated an assault, as evidenced by your own posts. You executed part of that assault in this courtroom." Each point landed like a gavel strike, even though the gavel remained still. Lacey's face crumpled with every line, her body shrinking under the weight of what she had done. "And despite all that," Judy added, "Ms. Levinson never retaliated. She never slandered you. She sought resolution, not revenge." The difference between the two women was now painfully clear. Lacey looked at Mara again, really looked at her, not as an enemy, not as a symbol of everything she lacked, just as a person she had hurt beyond reason. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry. Not loud, not dramatic, just real." Mara closed her eyes, a tremble running through her shoulders. "I know," she whispered, and somehow those two words felt heavier than any accusation. Judy let the moment settle before continuing. "Ms. Durham," she said, "your apology is noted, but it does not erase what must come next." The finality in her tone made Lacey's breath hitch, because this was no longer the story of a meltdown. This was the story of its price. The courtroom was quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful. It felt like standing in the center of a storm after the lightning has already struck, charged, trembling, waiting for the thunder that must inevitably follow. And Judge Judy's lifted gavel was the thunder. Judge Judy didn't bring the gavel down immediately. She held it suspended, letting the weight of everything linger. Truth, regret, consequence, and the fragile thread of humanity now exposed in everyone involved. Her voice, when it came, was softer than before, but not gentler. "Before I deliver my ruling," she said, "I want both parties to understand what justice truly means in this courtroom." Lacey wiped tears from her chin, hands trembling. She looked drained, hollowed out, as if guilt had finally found all the places she'd hidden it. Mara stood opposite her, posture steady but eyes glistening. She wasn't angry anymore. What sat in her expression now was something far heavier, the helpless grief of someone who wished this entire ordeal had never happened in the first place. Judy turned to Mara first. "You came here today for answers," she said, "not to punish Ms. Durham, but to reclaim your name." Mara nodded, her voice barely above breath. "I just wanted to stop feeling scared." That admission threaded through the courtroom, touching something vulnerable in every witness, every spectator. Fear was invisible, but it left a very real bruise. Then Judy looked at Lacey. "Ms. Durham," she said, "look at Ms. Levinson." Lacey hesitated. Shame kept her eyes down, but Judy's tone brooked no negotiation. "Look at her." Slowly, painfully, Lacey lifted her eyes. When Mara met her gaze, the two women stood in a silent exchange, heavy with everything spoken and unspoken between them. Judy watched them both carefully. "This is the emotional cost of your actions," she said. "Not the money, not the cleanup, not the contracts or the posts." She pointed gently toward Mara. "It's the human being you wounded." Lacey's face twisted as she squeezed out the words. "I never wanted her to be afraid of me." "But she was," Judy replied, "because you left her no choice." Mara closed her eyes, a tear sliding down her cheek. Slow, reluctant, like it had been waiting to fall since the first day the harassment began. "And Ms. Levinson," Judy continued, turning to her, "you have carried the emotional burden of someone else's insecurity. You've watched strangers judge you based on lies. That kind of damage isn't easily repaired." Mara lowered her gaze. "I know." Judy leaned back, breathing slowly, deliberately. "Justice," she said, "must acknowledge pain, but it cannot be fueled by it." Lacey bit her lip so hard it turned white. "I'm so sorry," she whispered again, quieter this time, less for show, more from a breaking place inside her. Mara didn't respond with anger. She didn't even step back. She simply nodded, a tiny, fragile nod that said, "I hear you." But it still hurt. The energy in the room softened, but it didn't lighten. This wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was the moment before the verdict, the moment when emotions settled just enough for justice to speak with clarity. Judge Judy lowered the gavel slightly. "We're almost done," she said, and the room held its breath for the final time. "Before you hear the verdict, ask yourself, can anyone truly change, or do people simply learn to hide who they are better?" The gavel lowered, but it didn't strike yet. Judge Judy held it just above the block, letting the entire room feel the weight of the decision hanging in the air. Then, with a steady breath, she brought justice down. The sound echoed through the courtroom, firm, final, not angry, but deeply resolute. "Here is my ruling," Judge Judy said, her voice clear and unwavering, cutting through the silence like a beam of light through dense fog. She looked first at Mara, the plaintiff who had endured more damage than anyone should from a simple cake order. "For the financial losses caused by Ms. Durham's targeted harassment, lost contracts, refunds issued, and damage to your business reputation, you are awarded full compensation." A collective shift swept through the room. Relief washed across Mara's face, her shoulders loosening as if months of tension had finally been allowed to slip away. Judy continued. "In addition, Ms. Durham will issue a written and public apology that addresses the specific harm she caused, including the false accusations and the incitement of online attacks." Lacey's breath hitched, but she nodded weakly. She didn't argue, she didn't protest. She understood. "And finally," Judy added, "because of the premeditated nature of the assault in this courtroom, the incident and supporting evidence will be referred to the show's producers for further action." This was as close to criminal consequence as a civil show could go. Accountability without crossing into sentencing. The audience absorbed the ruling with a quiet mixture of approval and solemnity. There was no celebration, no dramatic gasp, just acceptance. Justice had been served, not explosively, but with clarity and dignity. Judy turned her gaze to Lacey. "Ms. Durham," she said, "I believe you are capable of growth, but growth requires humility. And humility requires taking responsibility without excuses." Lacey's chin trembled, tears filled her eyes again, but she didn't wipe them away this time. "I understand," she whispered. "I hope you do," Judy replied, "because arrogance collapses quickly. But the truth stands, long after the frosting dries, long after the audience goes home, long after your bravado fades." Lacey lowered her head, not in defeat but in realization. The kind of realization that only comes when the consequences are finally undeniable. Then Judy turned to Mara, her tone shifting, gentler, almost warm. "Ms. Levinson, may you now get back to doing what you do best, creating something sweet in a world that often forgets how much sweetness matters." Mara let out a soft, relieved laugh through tears. "Thank you, Your Honor." The courtroom felt lighter then, not because everything was fixed, but because the truth had been given room to breathe, and justice had stitched the pieces back together enough for healing to begin. Judge Judy lifted her gavel one final time. "This case," she said, "is concluded." The sound reverberated like a closing chapter. Lacey stood still, quietly crying. Mara exhaled deeply. The bailiff began ushering the room to its natural hum of movement again.